Tuareg movie recaps.
Set in the year 2157, the film presents us with a completely idealized planet Earth in which wars and diseases are things of the past. Even nature is respected by society. Since they reached the limits of progress in their home, the humanity has launched into space in search of extraterrestrial life and new frontiers. In that context, we meet Maskeen, a young explorer who was calmly sailing through space until an asteroid hits his ship. Therefore, Maxim has no choice but to make an emergency landing on the nearest planet. He barely goes out to explore the terrain. His ship explodes from the damage, leaving him without any communication on a completely unknown planet. Despite this, Maxim maintains hope, because everything he saw reminded him of the Earth. Upon reaching a forest, he makes the first contact with a local, who does not hesitate to point his gun at him with the help of his translation capsule. Maxim, I discovered that the man's name is ZEF. And he sees it as an unknown threat. Consequently, Maxim is taken to a military base where they are subjected to interrogation as they view his memories through a device. Even so, the military does not think the information is enough and they decide to send the Maximum to the capital, assigning the gay soldier as their escort. At that, Maxim hears a strange signal that provokes nothing more than curiosity, but he made the soldiers enter a kind of trance so that they would sing the anthem of his country. On the way to the capital, Maxim notices a tower and Gala points out as one of his greatest defenses against the enemy. Suddenly the tower explodes and the structure falls on the road, overturning the gay military convoy. He is trapped by the rubble, although Maxim does not hesitate to help him when they get out of the car and see the chaos that the rebels have caused. The greatest enemies of the government of that country. As long as you maximize, they head to the capital on foot. The head of the Special Investigations Department. Strange that he orders his subordinate Frank to bring Maxim immediately. At that time the protagonist's memories were being investigated in an asylum, although Frank manages to quickly get him out. On the other hand, the capital's prosecutor receives news that Stranica has just summoned a savage, so he asks for all the information about him on the way to the Special Investigations Department. Maxim witnesses another signal to sing the hymn, but Frank only suffers an epileptic seizure. Then the soldiers immediately take him away. In the middle of the altercation, Maxim blends into the crowd, staying at his expense in an unknown city. Even so, the young man marvels at everything he finds, because it seems so familiar and strange at the same time, while the unknown parents, the leaders of Father Line, the country where they are, meet to point out Stranica as a failure. For losing the supposed individual from another planet to test the loyalty of Strinik, the Beep leader. He orders him to murder one of the leaders in cold blood. Back with Maxim. We see him entering a bar where he falls in love at first sight with a beautiful waitress named Rada. During this, one of the customers disrespects Rada, so Max Lin compares him to an angry animal. The client tries to hit him, but Maxim easily counters him to teach him manners. On the way they are intercepted by the man from before, who brought in thugs to get revenge. Maxim never tires of teaching him manners. Impressed, Rada invites him to her house, where the protagonist meets Gay again, who does not seem very excited to see him, but she receives him from her sister during her stay with her brothers. The man discovers that they are fans of some bizarre movies that are actually the memories of people who come from other planets, although they do not know that part. Furthermore, both of them were brainwashed by the government since it was closed. Does he believe that his planet is the center of the universe and nothing else exists? For his part, Gay reveals that his planet is called Zarek and that the unknown fathers protect El Pace with their defense towers. Maxim has no choice but to play along to gain the trust of Gay, who convinces him to become a candidate for the National Guard. Therefore, Maxim begins a tough training in which he stands out from the other candidates. Over time he becomes closer friends with Gale while falling in love with Raba, whom he tells about his home planet even though she does not understand his stories. She cannot resist kissing him in the next training test. Maxim and the candidates are ordered to capture hidden rebels who are identified by their epileptic seizures when they hear the anthem signal. Then they arrive at a hideout where a rebel almost takes Chacho, the squad captain, by surprise, although Maxim manages to stop the rebel. After thanking the cadet, the captain laments the operation, pointing out that the rebels are people like them, with families. Maxim himself confirms this in a subsequent interrogation, where the rebels reveal themselves as ordinary people who had some ideas contrary to the government, but they are not terrorists. To Maxim's displeasure, the military brutally tortures them. The next day, Chacho sends the protagonist his last test before granting him the title of guard. For this he must execute a group of rebels in the forest, but Maxim returns shortly after with the squad, then confesses that he freed those people and begins to talk to him about justice on Earth, although Chaku only shoots Guy, who will be degraded for trying to defend the protagonist. However, Maxim would not leave so easily, as shortly after he was found by the same group of rebels. Among them is a doctor who tends to his wound, and according to the rules of his world, he should have died. Given Maxim's doubts, the rebels tell him that the unknown fathers are nothing more than conspirators who rose in power through the defense towers. Contrary to what the government propaganda says, those towers emit mental control signals that they guarantee the loyalty of the population twice a day. Most people experience a patriotic frenzy, while a minority, the rebels, are able to resist the brainwashing, but suffer intense pain and convulsions. At this point, a new signal is produced that causes convulsions in both the rebels and the prosecutor, outraged by the government's abuse. Maxim prepares an attack on a tower with the rebels after sneaking through a wire fence. The group begins the attack with missiles and rifles, while Maxim makes his way to the tower with his bare fists until he installs the first explosive charge. After losing the element of surprise, the rebels try to take cover, but there are too many soldiers against them, although the good thing is that they keep them distracted. For Maxim to continue installing the charges, done that, the young man takes a rope to drag his companions just before exploding the tower back into the forest. Maxim takes refuge with the surviving rebels only for one in a state of agony to confess. Who was a snitch for the government. Despite the risks it entailed, Maxim returns to the city to meet Rada again and make love to her for the first time. The next day he is scolded by Guy, who reminds him that many towers are built a day, and that his attack will only bring them problems, so he asks her to flee to the mountains with his sister, but it was too late, as the authorities burst into the apartment to arrest Maxim. The young man tries to defend himself with his fists, although he gives in when he sees that the guy is threatening Rada. Consequently, the protagonist is taken to a maximum security prison full of rebels, where he soon reunites with himself. Maxim tells him about the assault on the tower so that he does not believe that he is an infiltrated spy. But CF no longer believes in the cause. On the other hand, Stanek meets with the prosecutor to request Maxim's custody to do experiments on him. The prosecutor did not intend to hand him over, although he changes his mind when Estrony offers him the first seizure-inhibiting helmet in exchange. Then he agrees to hand over the prisoner in 5 days. Back in prison, we see that inmates are deployed in war zones to dismantle the automatic turrets that were abandoned after decades of battles with neighboring nations. Maxim's first mission is a success, especially due to the skill of the chef and another colleague who had a lot of experience in that field. Furthermore, failure means running out of food. His next task is to clear an underground camp of dangerous mutants. At that point he fell into one of the trenches and Maxim did not take long to rush to his aid. For his part, the prosecutor analyzes Maxim's file and discovers that he is immune to the tower's signals. He immediately decides to break his agreement with our Anik. And he requests that they bring that prisoner to him as soon as possible. During their excursion through the Maxim ISF tunnels, they find the remains of a fortress where there are viewers over a beautiful territory. The show is interrupted by a strange figure in the shadows that destroys the viewfinder and lanterns in the darkness. The inmates are attacked by an angry mutant who nearly kills ZF, but Maxim manages to knock him out outside. Maxim tries to communicate with the mutant. And seeing that he is just a scared animal, he decides to free him despite the surf warnings. The next day, the protagonist tells Sepp about his plans against the government, although he does not want to destroy more towers, but rather the command center that controls the others. That would end the problem once and for all, or is that what the naive young man believed, since Sepp makes it clear to him that the towers not only transmit signals, but also emit certain radiation that completely manipulates people. Whatever the government says about radiation will be accepted as the absolute truth. Because of the population, so there is no point in destroying the command center. The damage is already done. Upon hearing that, Maxim asks if any of the neighboring nations have immune people like him, to which an inmate replies that it is unlikely. Maybe mutants are immune too, but it's just a theory. Returning to their path, the prisoners are ambushed by an automatic tank and small tanks armed with turrets, while their companions take cover. The next day, the protagonist tells Sepp about his plans against the government, although he does not want to destroy more towers, but rather the command center that controls the others. Maxim rushes out to flank the tank. And he manages to sneak inside it after deactivating the automatic defense system. Maxim says goodbye to his fellow inmates, as he will go south in search of allies for his rebel crusade. The problem is that he ignores warnings that the south is a former war zone riddled with mines. As he advances, mines explode non-stop until the tank is lost in a cloud of smoke. The prosecutor explodes with fury when he finds out this, because his chance for a cure died. However, the tank was able to withstand all the explosions until reaching a border post. Where Maxim recognizes Guy, who goes to inspect the driver, he barely pushes Guy inside. Maxim attacks the border post to head towards the neighboring nations, and that's how this movie ends. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and thanks for watching.